I'm Mims Henstorf, and I'm here today interviewing Jim Wenstrand. Jim, you want to begin by just telling us something about your life in the 30s?
Okay, according to the deal number one, my father didn't go to high school, but did at least 1 year to Iowa State in 1912. And then also I've got a deposit here in 1901 where he put $1 in the bank.
Okay.
So,
and we'll take a picture of that as we get
and
done.
and at the time, why they had to get a permit to vaccinate their own hogs, and that was in 1933. And this was his registration for the draft from 1917. And on number two, first memories, in 1934-35, it was 105 degrees on Memorial Day. And at that time, why, they had services at church. And it was so hot that they put out benches, and it was on the south side of the church then, so in the shade. So, and some others of the number two, we had a furnace in our house and cut wood and sawed wood to fit the furnace. Coal was expensive and ways to get it, so we couldn't afford much of it. And like everyone else, we had a cook stove and burned wood and cobs, which we picked up in the hog lot after we fed hogs ear corn. Why, they'd eat the corn off, and then we go pick up the cobs to burn. And most of the time during the winter, we stayed in the kitchen during the evening because it was warm from the cook stove, and we shut the doors so it stayed in the kitchen. And when we sat on the oven door too, if you got first chance at it, that was warmer, so to really warm up. And then of course we went to bed pretty early, and there was no electricity, so we went to bed in the dark. But we'd make a dash upstairs and hit the cold bed, and of course the parents had made plenty of blankets, so we pulled them over, and you know, you felt the wall going up, and you soon learned to hit it pretty good. So sometimes in the winter we'd wake up in the morning because windows weren't real tight, and we'd have a little snow on top of the blanket, so but we survived. And Father had purchased an 80-acre farm where we live now, and he had borrowed $8,000, $100 an acre from private source in Essex, as banks didn't seem to do that then, and this was the only option. And the name of the people was Bridger, and I saw in an abstract that their worth was over 100,000, which was hard to believe then. But before the note was due, this man died all of a sudden, and the notes read that they would due upon death. So he was there wasn't anything much to do, you know, was about ready to lose it then. And So then they heard of a place in Omaha that was making loans to farmers. And there was 3 other people in the area, and they got together, and they all went to Omaha. And that was, I believe, when was later known, if it wasn't known then, as Federal Land Bank. And they had not put any agents out yet into the country. They would just hit Omaha. And so all 4 of them got a loan, so they come home and we still had the roof over our heads. So 10-cent corn and hard times made it impossible to keep house and buildings repaired as they should be. But we were happy, and church was the main place to go, and once a week to town for supplies. We also visited neighbors close, and when snow was bad, why, we did hook up the team and bobsled and went to church, so we made it, and that was the main thing to go. I don't know about this other, on Saturdays, we would take eggs, 30 dozen cases, down here to Henry Fields during the hatching season, because you get a little bit of a premium over the market for hatching eggs, and then you'd get the ticket and go across the street. Henry Fields had a grocery store then. You get groceries and head for home. And then you go down to Barron's, which was a salvage yard, but they had a gas station there too, and in the back they had a pump where you got white gas for 10 cents a gallon. So because of too many hogs, I just barely remember part of that. I know we went through the time when they destroyed baby pigs to get the numbers down. So.
Okay, you talked about buying gas. What's white gas compared to what we?
Well, it doesn't have lead
nowadays?
in it.
Okay.
And the white gas is what you would burn in. We had one gas lamp at home. Otherwise, the rest of them were kerosene lamps. Okay. And if you had company, why, there was mantles on it, you know, and that would burn white gas, and it made a lot more light than the old kerosene.
Was it cleaner? I mean, it didn't have as much smoke, or?
Oh no, it didn't. It was.
Okay.
You had to burn the wicks down with a match first before you lit them up, and it was. We usually done that in the house. We were different, I guess. Some reason or another, we had a bathtub, but it was a wooden bathtub, and it was lined with lead and had a cover over it. So you'd shut the cover, and we filled our lamps and stuff then. And also, it was handy if you got company real fast, you could raise that lid and throw the junk in.
That's how you cleaned out.
Yeah, you could clean real fast. So
when you were in town and bought this gas, did you have a gas tank at the farm? Or did you have a tractor that used gas and a car that used gas?
We had a tractor that used gas, but that used leaded gas, not white gas. You took that home in a small can, 2 or 2 gallon usually.
The white gas.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did have your other gas delivered to the farm.
Yeah, and that was, of course, put out in 5-gallon buckets. There was no hose or anything, so they'd put a funnel in a 50-gallon barrel and let it run in, carry it over every time. So
in the bucket, so
in
they
the buckets,
know how much you were taking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you also talked about that winter when you had a lot of snow. Did they cancel school then when you were going to school? And
No, school was never canceled, even in high school.
and you went to a country school, and then how did you get there?
Walk, but school was right close to our place, and we kept the teacher most of the time. A lot of times she couldn't get home, and so, and then, you know, when you first started, well, you went over there and you had to get out in the pump and pump the water and bring it in, and it's kind of hard to realize how finicky they can get nowadays. We had a bucket in the back of the school and one dipper, and everybody drank out of it, and they all lived, so.
Then, did you take a lunch with you to school?
Yeah,
And you remember
but I
what
was
your mom
close enough,
packed, or-
yeah, sometimes I'd run home.
Okay.
But in the wintertime, why, it was a round stove, it had a cover around it, and when they come to school, why, they would put their lunch up on top, and so it would get warm then for, went noon, so.
So it wasn't a sandwich, it was maybe leftovers from the night before? Or?
No, it was sandwiches,
Okay.
and some of them would have an orange or an apple, and it survived, so.
Go ahead.
Oh, let's see, back on 3, you said to ask about food change. You know, like everyone else, we butchered our own and canned the meat. We raised pretty large gardens and canned into 1 quart and 2 quart jars, both fruits and vegetables. Potatoes were raised and dug and put in the basement on the floor. We scrubbed them before we ate them, so. And on the back porch, why, I can remember we had a tub and a washboard, and you'd scrub your overalls on that. And, later on, why, we had a gas-powered washing machine, but it was hard to keep that thing running, but so we'd get the tub out and the washboard again, so. But we survived. And about jobs, I got 50 cents a day and I furnished a horse for a hay fork, and you run that rope, you know, to pull the hay up and get it into the barn. And then also, why, I carried water to the thrashing crew. We had thrashing crews, so there were several out in the field, and I'd have 2 jugs on and most everybody was the same way, on the saddle horn, and they were wrapped in a gunny sack, and you pumped in fresh water into them, and then after you got the cork in, well, you dip them in the tank to get them wet, to keep them cooler while you rode out and made the rounds. Of course, your pants would all get wet from that, but usually,
That probably felt pretty good though too, didn't it?
yeah, it was hot, so that didn't hurt anything. And probably about the only thing in the jobs. Well, we done run the binders for, you know, to make shocks, bundles, and then you'd shock them afterwards. And a lot of people can remember that. But the first round, why, it threw the bundles in the field, so then you had to walk around and throw them back out so you'd go the next round. So, and a lot of them were run with horses, but later on, why, they had tractors to pull them. So, and looking back, it was difficult times. However, everybody was in the same situation, so didn't know any different. and we're happy, and we didn't starve. Because the roads, many times doctors couldn't get out or people get in, so home remedies were used, and most of them worked. Many tonsils were taken out in the kitchen of homes. I didn't have mine taken out, but knew of several that did. And I spent the summer in bed with high fever in 1936, and then that same winter we had that heavy snow, so we milked cows, fed cattle and hogs, and had chores every day before school and after school. This left little time to get into trouble. Might not be a bad thing for today either. So we had on the more somber note, we had people for some reason or another were discouraged or other problems, and they took their own lives, and that happened pretty often. In fact, we had one family, I think it was about 4 of them. So
you talked a little bit about the heat in the summer. Do you remember if the dust was coming through from, we always hear the talk about the dust storms from Oklahoma. How did the dust storms affect you here?
Well, I don't, we had some, but they didn't make an impression on me. Okay. And then, of course, we had raised wheat, and then we had a bunch of chinch bugs come in, and then we would dig holes every so far along the edge of the field, and we got, I can't remember this black, I can't say the name right now, and we'd pour on there, and then they would follow that on in to the holes, and then sometimes we'd touch that match to that to burn them, try to hold the chinch bug back. So
it was something that was flammable, like a
yeah,
creosote or something.
It was
like
creosote. That was
okay.
right. It was
okay.
creosote, and that's pretty sticky stuff.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
you talked about having your large vegetable garden, and talked about taking your eggs into town. Did you take your vegetables in? Did you have enough extra that you took those in to sell?
No, we never. There wasn't any farmers market or that way then, because everybody, even town people, had. I know my grandfather in Essex, he had a room off of his garage, and he had chickens in it, and so they had their own eggs.
Okay.
So.
And then, what kind of groceries then were you buying with your egg money?
Well, I remember one time the old Model A had a heater come off of the manifold, and it was the front, but then they had one that went to the back seat. Well, my mom had been down the fields, and they had a big sale on the giving away cabbage, and so we put that in the floor in the back seat. Then all of a sudden that heater decided to work. We smell cabbage all over, but you cooked it and canned it too, so it was another source of food. So.
And we've heard talk about the beef clubs that were around in those days. Did your family belong to one of those?
Oh yeah, and they were usually grass fat, because they weren't corn fed much then. And I don't know how many was in our club, but it was up there by the church. And the butcher, he would come the night before, and you furnished everybody took their turn to furnish one. And I got up several times, especially if it rained, and saddle up the horse, and you go up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and you take the milk bucket on the saddle horn. And because if you got there early enough, then you could get a share of the liver before it was gone. And but then it was butchered and stacked out, and whatever share you had, why they put it in and hung it on a scale, and you took off and went home with it.
And that was usually a week's supply, or?
Well, a lot of times you went home and the steak went in the skillet, and you'd have steak and gravy for breakfast. So
Used right away then.
oh yeah.
What about Christmas? Can you tell us a little bit about how you celebrated Christmas, and if it was different before the actual Depression came along? And
We didn't. We never exchanged presents or anything, and we didn't wait until Christmas if you needed a pair of overalls. So, but I don't ever remember anything from my folks for Christmas until 1945. So.
what about a tree? Did you have a tree and decorate a little in your house?
Yeah, a little bit, but we usually cut them. And of course, we didn't get electricity till 1941, and but we got along, and so everything worked out.
What kind of games or activities did you do with other kids? You said you were near the school, so did you go to the schoolyard and,
Yeah.
and play?
And that was Sunday afternoons a lot of time too. So yeah, kids would come in, and you know, they about all walked to it, and that didn't hurt anything.
So just kind of impromptu on Sunday
Yeah,
afternoon, just meet at the schoolyard?
My teacher in country school had a brother that was working off somewhere for a sports company that sold footballs and stuff. And so he had given her, we had the best football in all of them. It was real leather. Yeah.
Which school was that?
Center, Fremont Center,
And the church is?
Fremont Lutheran.
Thank you.
And then, of course, when you started, before you started school, why, you had to go and take your turn and pump the well dry so it'd come in fresh water. So, and that was all right. Didn't wear the handle out.
Did you participate, did you have any sports teams where you actually played against other schools, or?
No, but our country school teacher was real good, and on a nice day and got towards the end, why, she would figure out a way and fix up picnic basket and take us. I know we were up there by the county line into Timber and have a picnic, and so yeah,
An end of the school activity of some kind.
yeah. And she was also the one that, you know, when at the end of the year, why, they'd all have the whole parents and that would have a picnic. And at that time, of course, why, all the country kids had to go to Corinda and take a pretty hard test, and we all feared that. And I didn't know how much my teacher feared that until we come to the picnic, and she come a-running and said, "How did you get along?" I said, "Well, I passed." So she was pretty happy about that. But we got pictures at home of, there was a big row of them that was down there taking that exam. So
So all the country schools went into Clarinda to...
Yeah, the town kids didn't have to do that. They didn't, they just went from, of course, they had kindergarten earlier, and they just went from there right into high school. So, but we had to take the test. So.
What about birthdays? You said you didn't celebrate Christmas very much. Did you have some kind of celebration for your birthdays as children?
Oh, not really. Well, of course, you'd go out in the barn and everywhere where the chickens were running and find the eggs, and then Mom would make an angel food cake. So if it didn't flop, everybody had to be quiet while that was not stomp on the floor. So.
Okay. You talked about getting new overalls, and so just when your other ones completely wore out, or
And
what was the clothing
you
situation?
patched them a lot.
Okay.
So, and then later on, when they got too bad, why they ripped them up in strips and made rugs out of them. So somebody had a loom, and they'd wind them in and out. They'd last. Of course, you could wash them rugs, but they were heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And did they put them over the line outside, and what's it?
Oh,
the
yeah.
kids' chores to beat them, or you couldn't?
Well, you see, there wasn't any fastened down rugs. They were all laid, and they didn't quite go up to the wall a lot of times, and you had to take them, roll them up, and once or twice a year, and take them out and then unroll them and put them on the line. And then you had a carpet beater with a handle on it, and you beat that until you got all the dust out, and then you there's no electricity for vacuum cleaners, so and it worked.
Okay, anything else that our talk might have reminded you of during those days? Could you see any difference from the early 30s and the late 30s as far as your economic situation, that maybe things were getting a little better as the war in Europe started and we started looking toward that?
Well, you see, corn was 10 cents a bushel, and I don't remember what year, but then there came in a program where you could seal it for 50 cents, and that made quite a boost.
Mm-hmm.
So there was it, and I don't remember the figures on the other, but we would take wheat in, and the mill would grind it, and you get your own flour and stuff. So. And later on, why they got so they would have it packaged up, and you would exchange it. So it was
Okay.
it was all right.
Anything
And
else?
then about the food, why we didn't have refrigeration, and later on, why there was an ice route, so we had an ice box, and they'd come around and bring ice out. But you bake bread, and it'd get a mold on it after so long, You pull that off, and you ate what wasn't moldy, so, and it didn't hurt you. So we got along fine.
And how about Swedish traditions?
Well,
Was it your grandparents that were the first that arrived?
well, my grandmother came over when she was 16, and they got into a bad storm, and so they were 2 weeks overdue, and they run out of food and stuff, and she said, I'll never go back there again. So
So was Swedish spoken in their house? Was it something you're...
No, not much. And when they closed up the country school, why there was a bunch of old contracts and stuff laying in there, and so we kind of divided some of them out. And one of them was a contract to the teacher, and I don't know, it was for $30-some, but it was required that don't let the kids get on the road, because there was starting to be some cars then. And then don't let them talk the Swedish language. You have to talk English, so that was a requirement of the teacher.
In those days, they wanted everyone to speak English.
Yep. So,
Jim, I had a question. When you went into town to shop, did you go to Red Oak or did you go to Essex?
for school?
No, to shop, like it when you're
Oh, Essex.
Essex, you did,
Yeah.
okay. I wasn't sure.
We went to Red Oak a little bit because grandparents lived there,
Okay,
but it was mostly Essex. And then later on, you know, it got into where in the summer Essex was open on Wednesday nights, and they had the band stand was downtown, and they had a band concert. Some of the guys and that was entertainment. But we had one requirement that was always watch for the kids. There was cars in, and they were thick, of course. Boy, don't let them kids run out between the cars, because they weren't used to town, and they'd shoot out. They were always watching out for that. So
What were some of the stores in Essex in the 30s?
in the 30s, we had 2 banks, 2 grocery stores, 2 drugstores,
A doctor?
2 restaurants, a veterinary up in the east end of town, and I know there was a Dr. Okerlund, and he'd done quite a little of his business in the back of the drugstore. So they just had a chair, and then you go up, and their medicines then were mixed up then, mixed there. It wasn't like now where you pull out all kinds of bottles, pills and that. So, and of course one of the good things to remember is those old timers had some real good stories. And they would always try to get one on another one, so that was their entertainment.
And those country kids that came into Essex for high school, did they come in every day, or did some of them board in town during the week? How did
Well,
that work?
in Red Oak, some of them were out quite a way. They stayed in town, but in Essex, most all of us, we were going back and forth. I know I drove a Model A to school. I rode with the neighbor the first year, and then I drove for 3 years, and I had 2 other kids that rode with me. And
No school buses?
no, oh no. And I went out for baseball and football, but not basketball because that was too late at night. But and the baseball, why we played Emerson and Coyne and some of those towns around, and we had to drive our own vehicle then, and we had fun. So, and I didn't know what my batting average was until after about a year or 2 years after I got out of high school. And Johnny G.E. Carlson, he always kept the deal, and he said, "Say, do you know what your batting average was?" And I said, "No." Didn't care really. But he knew, he'd kept track of it. So,
So what was your batting average?
312. I didn't grow till I got out of high school, so I got a lot of walks. Yeah, but we had a lot of fun. And
Thank you very, very much for coming in.
okay. I don't know. I was probably, let's see, if I was 10, it'd been about 34. And it was a biplane, but an open cockpit, of course.
And had you even seen planes before?
It was news to us, you know.
Yeah, and then to see it that close.
Come in and we got him some water and he poured it in the radiator, and I can remember that as plain, and then took off down
And
our
off he
field.
went again.
Was he wearing goggles and a hat and a scarf? You
One
know,
of
like
those.
they
Yeah.
do in the movies?
Was it the Red Baron?
Well, they had to have goggles, you know,
Yeah.
and they all had that cap, you know.
The aviator
Yeah.
hat.
I wonder what on earth he was doing. How fascinating.
Well, it was, I didn't catch the name or anything, so